Today, we're looking at the iconic MP5. I want to give a shout out to Redbeard Mortis for making the thumbnail for today's video. Making good thumbnails is a personal kryptonite of mine, and Red did an amazing job. If you need any work done yourself, hit him up. He's also doing a t-shirt giveaway once he hits 10 members on YouTube. Now let's get back to it. The MP5 is a very solid SMG that's not only decent without attachments, but also has a damage value of 29, out-damaging the SG-550 rifle which we covered earlier. Pairing the higher than typical damage for an SMG with a fire rate of 800, this weapon can put people down, and fast. The only two downsides for this weapon are the slower bullet velocity of 400, which makes firefights past 40 meters a bit tricky, and the weapon has no extended mags, so your heart's stuck at 30 rounds. The high fire rate can also make you reload often if you hold down the trigger for too long. It's best to equip the quick mag once you have access to it. In many ways, it's very similar to the Honey Badger, but with a proper 30 round mag, less recoil to start, and the ability to equip barrel attachments. And because we're able to change out the barrel, it will be easier to narrow down the weapon's recoil. Before we get into the loadouts, if you find these videos helpful, please give this video a like, and if you want to see more videos more often, please consider subscribing. Starting with our early build for short range, we will want to skip the basic barrel, and instead use the compensator. The MP5 is already easy to control, and the compensator makes it slightly easier to use. Since this weapon does have great handling, I am going to try and limit the list of attachments to which ones benefit the weapon the most. As an alternative to the compensator, if you want to try something else early on, I'm also going to recommend the flash hider for the MP5. It will increase your vertical kick, which you will have to get ready for, but heavily reduces the horizontal recoil, which means this weapon will just kick straight up, and if you can get used to it, it works really well. This may not be the choice for everyone, but out of the few barrels available when leveling up, it's not the worst. If you are going to run the flash hider though, you will need to use an underbarrel attachment. And for the underbarrel grips, I recommend the RK6 and VTAC grips. Both grips lower the vertical recoil without any real downside, and the VTAC is the better of the two for recoil control, so it's definitely worth swapping over once you have it unlocked. Both of these two pair well with the flash hider, though you will still have some vertical kick to deal with. And when pairing these grips with the compensator, the weapon shoots very flat with some horizontal sway. Lastly, the P25 URK is another great option as it decreases both vertical and horizontal recoil, as well as reduce your reload and weapon draw times. Two things that we all want, and more so for an SMG. Just know the P25 won't help as much with the vertical recoil, but it's still very steady and pairs well with the compensator. And with all the attachments available, the DGN, Tactical, FAM-B, and SDN barrels are all good choices. I personally prefer the Tactical barrel as it lowers a lot of the vertical recoil, in exchange for a small first shot recoil penalty. The MP5 doesn't have much kick to begin with, so it's not difficult to get used to, and if you're spending a lot of time with ARs, you may not even notice that additional kick. For underbarrel attachments, I recommend the vertical and vertical skeleton grips if you just want to remove as much of that vertical kick as possible. It's not necessary, but they do help out a lot. My personal pick, however, is the Hera CQR front, as it helps with both vertical and horizontal recoil. So my current preferred build is the tactical barrel with a Hera grip. It feels like a really solid setup, and allows me to stay on target even at longer distances. Of course, no SMG build would be complete without a suppressor setup. Since it does take some time to unlock suppressors, I'm just going to include all of my grip recommendations here. Even with the suppressor which adds recoil, the MP5 is still very tame. It's even worth putting on the long suppressor if you like, but just know that it adds more recoil than the short version. And if you don't see your favorite grips on here, it's because I don't want to list every possible grip, but rather the ones that make the biggest change. And of course, we will see our repeat grips. The VTAC, SC, and B25 grips are all great. I personally prefer the B25 with a short suppressor, and the next grip I recommend is the stable grip, and more so if you want to run the long suppressor. Both suppressor barrels add a first shot recoil to the MP5, which the stable grip does a really good job removing most of it, allowing you to keep control of the weapon's recoil, and only having to deal with the vertical kick. Now, while the stable grip does help, the vertical grip does a better job keeping down the recoil in full auto, and more so with the long suppressor. It's up to you to decide which one you prefer more, easier first shot recoil, or better full auto control after that first shot. And lastly, the Hera CQR grip does a great job as well. Now let's move on to the long range builds. Since the MP5 is an SMG, we'll be limited to about 100 meters before the damage starts to drop off, and with a manageable recoil, we can again go full auto with some magnified optics. Most long-range optics actually for the MP5 will work even at full auto. I would only recommend to stay away from the ACOG if you're going to fire in burst or full auto. If you plan to tap fire, it works just fine. And of course, the slip optic will work best for full auto, just remember it's also the lowest powered long-range optic. For the barrels, it really just comes down to the compensator for early builds, then the DGN barrel, which is halfway down the list, would be the next best barrel to run. For underbarrel grips, the VTAC and B25 grips work just as well here. The recoil for the MP5 does get out of hand if you're mag dumping with a magnified optic, so it will be best to fire in burst or just tap fire. With all the attachments available, the DGN barrel is a good option, and the Van B would be my recommended barrel for range, as it helps with increased bullet velocity and lowers that vertical recoil. And for the underbarrels, the stable grip is always a great go-to for lowering that first shot kick. The Harris CQR, SC5, and vertical grips are also a solid choice if you're trying to burst fire or go full auto more often. Even with these attachments, you will need to have some trigger discipline, as the recoil would be too much for trying to go full auto with optics that are stronger than the slip optic. Don't forget you can also equip a canted or mounted sight to deal with those close range targets. So although the stable grip will help the most for tap firing, using these other grips will make the weapon more versatile and easier to use at any range. Also, even with the barrels that help with bullet velocity, you will still need to lead your targets a lot. Anything past 100 meters is better to tap fire and look for standing targets. Again, it is an SMG, so don't expect any consistency at that range. And that will wrap up today's showcase of the MP5. If you can get used to the 30 round mags, that's really all you need to worry about. The weapon is a lot of fun to use and you can definitely pull off some plays with it. Now if you want an SMG-like weapon with a larger mag and longer damage range, check out my showcase for the SG550. Let me know what you think about the MP5 and let's talk about it in the comments below. Until then, I'm Mr. Rain, and I will see you guys next time.